The soft hum of the air conditioning was the only sound in my office, a stark contrast to the storm raging within me. Friday evenings were typically a time for quiet reflection, a moment to savor the week's accomplishments and prepare for a tranquil weekend. Tonight, however, the routine was shattered, replaced by a chilling unease that settled deep in my bones. I had always prided myself on my meticulous nature, my ability to maintain order in every aspect of my life. The office, a testament to this control, was a sanctuary of polished wood and precisely arranged documents. Each item had its place, a reflection of the structured world I had painstakingly built. As I moved to dust the antique clock, a family heirloom that stood sentinel on my desk, a flash of gold caught my eye. It was nestled beneath a stack of financial reports, a delicate chain that seemed to shimmer in the dim light. I reached for it, my fingers trembling slightly as I recognized the intricate design. It was Emily's necklace, the one I had given her for our 10th anniversary, a symbol of our enduring bond. She had claimed to have lost it months ago, a minor annoyance that I had dismissed as a simple mishap. Now, as I held the cool metal in my hand, a wave of disorientation washed over me. How had it ended up here in my office, hidden beneath sensitive documents? The question echoed in my mind, a discordant note in the otherwise harmonious symphony of my life. I knew Emily had been spending more time away from home, attending what she described as volunteer meetings and social gatherings. I had trusted her, believing in the strength of our marriage, the foundation we had built over a decade. But the necklace, a tangible piece of evidence, whispered a different story. A story of deceit, of hidden meetings, of a betrayal that cut deeper than any physical wound. My mind raced, trying to reconcile the image of the loving wife I knew with the unsettling reality that was unfolding before me. I remembered the way she had looked lately, a certain brightness in her eyes that I had attributed to her newfound enthusiasm for her charitable work. Now, I saw it in a different light, a reflection of a secret happiness that excluded me. The weight of the gilded chain in my hand felt heavier with each passing moment, a symbol of the trust that had been broken, the foundation that had been shaken. I placed the necklace back on the desk, the soft clink echoing in the silence, a stark reminder of the fragile nature of truth. I needed answers, but not the kind that would come from a hasty confrontation. I needed to understand the depth of this betrayal, the extent of the deception that had been woven into the fabric of our lives. A cold resolve settled within me, a determination to uncover the truth, no matter how painful it might be. The drive home was a blur. The familiar streets, usually a source of comfort, now seemed alien, the houses passing by like painted backdrops in a play. I pulled into the driveway, the crunch of gravel under the tires a stark reminder of the reality I was about to face. I needed to maintain composure, to project an air of normalcy, to give no indication of the turmoil raging within me. Emily greeted me at the door with a warm smile, her eyes crinkling at the corners. "How was your day, darling?" she asked, her voice light and cheerful. "Fine," I replied, my voice betraying none of the chaos inside. Just the usual end-of-week reports. We moved into the living room, a space that had always felt like a sanctuary, a reflection of our shared tastes and memories. Now it felt tainted, the furniture and decor witnesses to a deception I was only beginning to comprehend. Emily busied herself with preparing dinner, her movements graceful and practiced. I watched her, studying her every gesture, searching for any sign of guilt or unease. But she moved with an effortless confidence, her demeanor as serene as ever. As we sat down to eat, I made an effort to engage in casual conversation, asking about her day, her volunteer work, her upcoming social engagements. She answered with enthusiasm, her words flowing effortlessly, painting a picture of a life filled with purpose and fulfillment. I listened, my mind dissecting every word, every nuance, searching for the hidden meaning behind her carefully constructed facade. The evening progressed, a carefully choreographed dance of normalcy. We watched a film, a light-hearted comedy that usually brought us laughter. Tonight, the humor felt hollow, the characters on screen distant and unreal. As the credits rolled, Emily yawned, stretching her arms above her head. "I'm exhausted," she said, her voice laced with a playful weariness. "I think I'll turn in early." I nodded, offering a reassuring smile. "Of course, darling. I'll be up in a bit." As she disappeared into the bedroom, I remained in the living room, the silence amplifying the thoughts swirling in my mind. I needed to understand the truth, to unravel the web of deceit that had been woven around me. But I knew that a direct confrontation would yield nothing but denials and carefully crafted lies. I needed a different approach, a strategy that would expose the truth without revealing my own suspicions. I would observe, I would listen, I would gather information, and then, only then, would I act. The seeds of a plan began to take root, a plan that would ensure that justice, however cold and calculated, would be served. The following days were a torment. I went through the motions of my life, attending meetings, making decisions, interacting with colleagues, all the while carrying the weight of my discovery. The world around me seemed to continue as normal, oblivious to the turmoil within me. Emily, too, remained unchanged, her demeanor as bright and cheerful as ever. But my perception had been irrevocably altered. Every word, every gesture was now scrutinized, analyzed for any hint of deception. Sleep became a luxury I could barely afford. The nights were filled with restless tossing and turning, my mind replaying the events of the past week, searching for answers that seemed to elude me. I found myself watching Emily, observing her with a newfound intensity. Her phone calls, her emails, her social media activity, all became subjects of my covert surveillance. I knew it was an unhealthy obsession, but I couldn't help myself. I needed to understand the extent of her betrayal, to identify the person who had shattered my trust. One evening, as Emily was getting ready for another volunteer meeting, I noticed a text message flash across her phone screen. It was a simple message, a single word. "Tonight." My heart pounded in my chest as I recognized the sender. It was David, my oldest friend, the man I had trusted implicitly. The pieces of the puzzle began to fall into place. The hidden meetings, the unexplained absences, the newfound excitement in Emily's eyes. It was David who had been sharing her secrets, David who had become the recipient of her affections. A wave of nausea washed over me, the betrayal cutting deeper than I could have imagined. David, the man I had considered a brother, had violated the sacred bond of friendship, had stabbed me in the back while pretending to be my confidant. The anger was a living thing inside me, a burning ember threatening to consume me. But I knew I couldn't let it control me. I needed to remain calm, to think clearly, to plan my next move. The world I had known, the world of trust and loyalty, had crumbled around me. In its place was a landscape of suspicion and deceit, where even the closest relationships could be tainted by betrayal. I felt a profound sense of loneliness, a realization that the people I had loved and trusted had become strangers, their true faces hidden behind carefully constructed masks. The journey ahead would be a difficult one, a descent into the darkness of human nature. But I was determined to see it through, to uncover the truth, no matter how painful it might be. The revelation of David's involvement added a new layer of complexity to the situation. It wasn't just the betrayal of a wife. It was the shattering of a lifelong friendship. David and I had been inseparable since childhood, sharing our dreams, our fears, our triumphs, and our failures. We had been each other's constant companions, our bond forged in the crucible of shared experiences. Now, that bond was irrevocably broken, replaced by a bitter resentment that gnawed at my soul. The thought of confronting him, of unleashing the fury that raged within me, was tempting. But I knew it wouldn't solve anything. It would only lead to a messy confrontation, a public airing of dirty laundry that would serve no purpose other than to satisfy my immediate need for vengeance. Instead, I chose a different path, a path that required patience, cunning, and an unwavering resolve. I would maintain the facade of friendship, acting as if nothing had changed, while secretly gathering evidence, observing their interactions, and plotting my revenge. It was a dangerous game, one that required me to suppress my emotions, to play the role of the unsuspecting friend, while secretly plotting their downfall. The next time I met David, I greeted him with a warm smile, my voice betraying no hint of the turmoil within me. We talked about work, about sports, about our families, just like we always had. But beneath the surface of our conversation, there was a new undercurrent, a tension that I knew only I could feel. I watched him closely, studying his every move, searching for any sign of guilt or remorse. But he was a master of deception, his demeanor as relaxed and confident as ever. As the weeks passed, I continued to play my role, attending social gatherings with them, engaging in casual conversations, pretending to be oblivious to their affair. It was a draining experience, a constant test of my willpower. But I knew it was necessary. I needed to gain their trust, to lull them into a false sense of security before I could strike. The charade took its toll on me. The constant need to suppress my emotions, to pretend to be someone I was not, left me feeling exhausted and empty. But I knew I couldn't give up. I had to see this through to ensure that they paid the price for their betrayal. My life became a carefully constructed illusion. Outwardly, I was the same Mark everyone knew. Successful, composed, and devoted to my wife. Inwardly, I was a detective, a strategist, a man consumed by a single-minded pursuit of justice. I began to meticulously document their affair, noting their clandestine meetings, their whispered phone calls, their coded messages. Technology became my ally, providing me with the tools to track their movements, to intercept their communications, to expose their web of deceit. I installed a discreet tracking device on Emily's car, allowing me to monitor her every journey. I discovered that her volunteer meetings often took her to a secluded cottage on the outskirts of town, a place where she and David could meet undisturbed. I also gained access to her email account, where I found a series of intimate messages exchanged with David, filled with professions of love and longing. The more I learned, the more disgusted I became. Their affair was not a casual fling, a momentary lapse in judgment. It was a carefully orchestrated betrayal, a deliberate act of deception that had been going on for months. They had planned their trysts, covered their tracks, and lied to my face with impunity. The anger I felt was a cold, hard thing, a burning ember that refused to be extinguished. But I knew I couldn't let it consume me. I had to channel it, to use it as fuel for my plan. I would not stoop to their level. I would not resort to violence or confrontation. My revenge would be subtle, calculated, and devastatingly effective. I began to subtly manipulate their lives, planting seeds of doubt, creating opportunities for suspicion and mistrust. I would drop hints about Emily's extravagant spending to mutual friends, knowing that the gossip would eventually reach David's ears. I would subtly sabotage David's work projects, causing delays and setbacks that would tarnish his reputation. I was playing a dangerous game, walking a tightrope between maintaining my facade and orchestrating their downfall. But I was confident in my abilities. I had always been a master strategist, a man who could see the bigger picture, who could anticipate his opponent's moves and counter them with precision. And in this game, the stakes were higher than ever before. My plan was not about sudden, explosive revenge. It was about a slow, agonizing erosion of their lives, a gradual dismantling of their happiness. I wanted them to feel the weight of their betrayal, to experience the same pain and isolation that I had endured. The first cracks began to appear in their carefully constructed facade. David, once a rising star in his company, started to experience a series of setbacks. Projects were delayed, deals fell through, and his reputation began to suffer. He grew increasingly frustrated and irritable, his usual confidence replaced by a nagging sense of self-doubt. Emily, too, started to show signs of strain. The whispers about her extravagance had reached her social circle, and she found herself being excluded from gatherings, her invitations dwindling. The charity she had been so passionate about became a source of stress, as questions were raised about her financial management. I watched their unraveling with a cold satisfaction. It was subtle, almost imperceptible to the casual observer, but I could see the signs. The joy had drained from their eyes, replaced by a weariness that spoke of sleepless nights and mounting anxieties. Their stolen moments of happiness were now tainted by a growing sense of unease. I continued to play my role, offering words of support and encouragement, while secretly reveling in their misfortune. I was like a puppeteer, pulling the strings, orchestrating their downfall with a detached precision. One evening, at a dinner party, I noticed a flicker of doubt in David's eyes as he watched Emily laughing with another man. It was a fleeting moment, but it was enough. The seed of suspicion had been planted, and I knew it would grow, slowly but surely, poisoning their relationship from within. My revenge was not about inflicting physical pain or causing public humiliation. It was about something far more insidious: the destruction of trust, the erosion of intimacy, the slow poisoning of their love. It was a cold, calculated revenge, but it was no less devastating for its subtlety. The social circles that Emily and David had once navigated with ease began to shrink. Invitations became less frequent, conversations more strained. The whispers about Emily's financial indiscretions and David's professional woes had cast a shadow over them, making them social pariahs. I watched as Emily, once the life of the party, found herself increasingly isolated. The friends who had once flocked to her side now kept their distance, their smiles strained, their eyes filled with suspicion. Her attempts to regain their favor were met with polite excuses and thinly veiled rejections. David, too, experienced a similar ostracization. His colleagues, once eager to collaborate, now avoided him, their conversations limited to curt greetings and professional formalities. The camaraderie he had once enjoyed was replaced by a cold distance, a palpable sense of mistrust. Their isolation was not just social, it was emotional. The affair that had once brought them excitement and passion now felt like a burden, a secret that separated them from the rest of the world. The stolen moments they shared were now tinged with guilt and anxiety, the joy replaced by a gnawing sense of unease. I observed their growing isolation with a detached satisfaction. It was a natural consequence of their actions, a fitting punishment for their betrayal. They had chosen to build their happiness on a foundation of deceit, and now that foundation was crumbling beneath them. Their world, once filled with laughter and companionship, was now shrinking, leaving them alone with their secrets and their lies. The isolation was a slow, agonizing torture, a constant reminder of the price they were paying for their betrayal. And I, the architect of their downfall, watched from the shadows, my heart filled with a cold, implacable justice. The strain of their isolation began to take its toll on their relationship. The passion that had once burned so brightly started to flicker and fade, replaced by resentment and recrimination. The stolen moments they shared were now punctuated by arguments, their whispered conversations filled with accusations and denials. Emily, accustomed to a life of luxury and social status, grew increasingly frustrated with their dwindling finances. David's career was faltering, his income shrinking, and the lifestyle they had once enjoyed was slipping away. She began to resent him for his failures, her love turning to bitterness. David, in turn, resented Emily for her constant complaints and her inability to understand his struggles. He felt trapped, suffocated by the weight of their secrets and the crumbling foundations of their lives. The affair that had once been an escape from his problems now felt like another burden to bear. Their arguments became more frequent, more intense. The love they had once shared was now a battlefield, littered with the debris of broken promises and shattered dreams. The intimacy they had once found in each other's arms was replaced by a cold distance, a palpable sense of estrangement. I watched their relationship unravel with a grim satisfaction. It was a slow, agonizing process, a gradual disintegration of their connection. The love that had once bound them together was now a source of pain and conflict, a constant reminder of their betrayal. Their once shared dreams of a future together were now shattered, replaced by a bleak reality of broken trust and fading hope. The foundation upon which they had built their relationship had crumbled, leaving them adrift in a sea of uncertainty and despair. And I, the silent observer, the architect of their downfall, watched as their world fell apart, piece by agonizing piece. While their personal lives were imploding, I continued to orchestrate their public downfall. I knew that true devastation wouldn't be complete without the sting of humiliation, the loss of their carefully crafted public image. Emily, still clinging to her social aspirations, continued to attend charity events, though the guest lists were now significantly less prestigious. At one such event, I ensured a reporter, known for her incisive questioning and penchant for scandal, was present. I had, of course, provided her with some background information regarding Emily's recent financial mismanagement of the charity. The reporter, sensing a juicy story, cornered Emily during the event, peppering her with questions about the alleged irregularities. Emily, flustered and unprepared, stammered through her responses, her carefully constructed composure crumbling under the scrutiny. The next day, the story was splashed across the local news, the headline screaming about charity queens fall from grace. Emily's picture, once gracing society pages, was now associated with scandal and suspicion. The social circles that had already begun to shun her now closed their doors completely. David, too, faced public humiliation. A series of anonymous tips to his professional regulatory body led to an investigation into his business practices. While nothing overtly illegal was uncovered, the investigation itself cast a shadow over his reputation, making it difficult for him to secure new clients or projects. Their public downfall was swift and brutal. The respect and admiration they had once enjoyed were replaced by scorn and suspicion. Their names, once synonymous with success and respectability, were now tainted with scandal and disgrace. I watched their public humiliation with a cold detachment. It was a necessary part of my plan, a crucial step in their complete and utter downfall. They had built their lives on a foundation of lies and deceit, and now they were paying the price, their carefully constructed facades crumbling before the eyes of the world. The public spectacle was only the beginning. The real damage was done by the whispers, the rumors that spread like wildfire through their social circles and professional networks. Emily, once the darling of the charity circuit, was now the subject of gossip and speculation. Her every move was scrutinized, her every word dissected. The whispers followed her like a shadow, poisoning her relationships and eroding her self-esteem. David, too, found himself the target of malicious gossip. His colleagues, once eager to sing his praises, now whispered behind his back, their conversations filled with doubt and suspicion. His professional reputation, once impeccable, was now tarnished, making it difficult for him to rebuild his career. The whispers were insidious, seeping into every aspect of their lives. They poisoned their friendships, strained their family relationships, and created a climate of mistrust and suspicion. Emily and David found themselves living in a world where everyone seemed to be watching, judging, and condemning them. The weight of the whispers was a constant burden, a heavy yoke that they could not escape. It eroded their confidence, shattered their self-worth, and left them feeling isolated and alone. They had become social outcasts, their lives defined by the whispers that followed them wherever they went. I, the orchestrator of their downfall, watched as the whispers took their toll. It was a slow, agonizing process, a gradual erosion of their spirit. The whispers were like 1,000 tiny cuts, each one inflicting a small but painful wound. And with each passing day, the wounds grew deeper, the pain more intense. Their world, once filled with laughter and light, was now shrouded in darkness, the whispers echoing in their ears like a constant reminder of their betrayal. They were trapped in a nightmare of their own making, their lives slowly unraveling under the weight of 1,000 whispers. As their world crumbled around them, Emily and David turned on each other. The love that had once bound them together was now a twisted, venomous thing, fueling their resentment and bitterness. Their arguments became more frequent, more explosive. Accusations flew back and forth, each one a poisoned dart aimed at the heart of their relationship. Emily blamed David for his career failures, for the loss of their social standing, for the financial strain that was slowly suffocating them. David, in turn, blamed Emily for her extravagance, her vanity, her inability to adapt to their changing circumstances. They were trapped in a vicious cycle of blame and recrimination, each one feeding off the other's misery. The intimacy they had once shared was replaced by a cold hostility, a palpable sense of disgust. They were like two wounded animals, lashing out in pain, their love replaced by a bitter hatred. I watched their descent into mutual destruction with a detached fascination. It was like watching a train wreck in slow motion, the inevitable collision drawing closer with each passing day. Their misery was a reflection of my own, a twisted mirror that showed me the depths of human despair. But there was no pity in my heart, only a cold satisfaction. They had made their choices, they had betrayed my trust, and now they were reaping the consequences. Their suffering was a validation of my own pain, a confirmation that justice, however cruel, was being served. Their once shared dreams of a future together were now a distant memory, replaced by a bleak reality of mutual animosity and loathing. The love that had once been their salvation was now their curse, a constant reminder of their betrayal and the price they were paying for it. And I, the silent observer, the architect of their downfall, watched as they tore each other apart, their love turning to ashes in the fires of their own making. Years passed. The sharp edges of my anger dulled, replaced by a weary emptiness. I had achieved my goal, orchestrated their downfall with meticulous precision. Emily and David were now shadows of their former selves, their lives shattered, their spirits broken. Emily, once vibrant and social, had become a recluse, rarely venturing out of her small apartment. The whispers had faded, but the damage was done. Her reputation was in tatters, her friends long gone. She lived a solitary existence, haunted by the ghosts of her past. David, once ambitious and driven, was a shell of his former self. His career never recovered from the scandal, and he drifted from one dead-end job to another. The alcohol that had once been a social lubricant became a crutch, a way to numb the pain of his failures. I had won, but the victory felt hollow. The satisfaction I had once anticipated was replaced by a profound sense of emptiness. The years of planning, the meticulous execution of my revenge, had left me emotionally drained, my soul weary. I had destroyed them, but in doing so, I had also destroyed a part of myself. The Mark who had once loved and trusted, who had believed in the enduring power of friendship and loyalty, was gone, replaced by a cynical, hardened man. I had achieved my goal, but at what cost? The question haunted me, a constant reminder of the price I had paid for my revenge. The victory was mine, but it was a Pyrrhic victory, a triumph that had left me empty and alone. Despite the passage of time, the ghosts of the past continued to haunt me. I had built a new life for myself, a life of success and accomplishment, but the memories of my betrayal lingered, casting a long shadow over my present. I tried to move on, to focus on my work, my hobbies, my new relationships. But the past was always there, lurking in the shadows, waiting for a moment of weakness to resurface. I would see Emily's face in a crowd, hear David's laughter in the wind, and the old wounds would reopen, the pain as fresh as ever. I tried to bury the past, to suppress the memories, but they refused to be silenced. They haunted my dreams, invaded my waking thoughts, and poisoned my ability to experience joy or contentment. I was a prisoner of my own past, trapped in a cycle of regret and recrimination. I realized that true healing could only come from forgiveness, from letting go of the anger and bitterness that had consumed me for so long. But forgiveness seemed impossible. The wounds were too deep, the betrayal too profound. How could I forgive those who had shattered my trust, who had destroyed my faith in love and loyalty? The question tormented me, a constant reminder of the unfinished business that weighed heavily on my soul. I knew that I needed to find a way to forgive, not for their sake, but for my own. But the path to forgiveness was long and arduous, and I was unsure if I had the strength to travel it. One evening, as I was browsing the news, a familiar name caught my eye. It was David. He had been arrested for a minor offense, a drunken brawl at a local bar. The article was brief, a mere footnote in the annals of local crime, but it was enough to send a shiver down my spine. The image of David, once so proud and confident, now reduced to a drunken brawler, filled me with a strange mixture of sadness and satisfaction. It was a stark reminder of how far he had fallen, how completely his life had unraveled. A few days later, I received a phone call from an old acquaintance. She told me that she had seen Emily recently, at a local grocery store. Emily, she said, looked frail and gaunt, her eyes filled with a haunting sadness. She was living alone, her health failing, her spirit broken. The news of their fates hit me harder than I expected. The anger and bitterness that had sustained me for so long suddenly seemed insignificant in the face of their suffering. I realized that my revenge, though meticulously planned and executed, had ultimately been pointless. It had not brought me peace, nor had it healed the wounds of the past. Instead, it had only created more pain, more suffering, more misery. The echoes of their fate reverberated through my own life, a constant reminder of the destructive power of revenge. I had sought to punish them, to make them pay for their betrayal, but in doing so, I had only perpetuated the cycle of pain and suffering. The realization was a sobering one, a wake-up call that forced me to confront the consequences of my actions. I had won the battle, but I had lost the war. My revenge had not brought me closure, only a deeper sense of emptiness and regret. The news of Emily and David's decline sparked a profound shift within me. The anger that had fueled me for so long began to dissipate, replaced by a growing sense of compassion. I saw them not as the betrayers who had shattered my world, but as flawed, vulnerable human beings who had made mistakes, just as I had. The realization was not a sudden epiphany, but a gradual awakening. It was a long, arduous journey, filled with setbacks and false starts. But with each passing day, the burden of the past grew lighter. The wounds of betrayal began to heal. I started to focus on my own life, on rebuilding the trust and intimacy that I had lost. I sought therapy, confiding in a compassionate professional who helped me to understand the roots of my anger and to develop strategies for coping with the pain of the past. I also began to practice forgiveness not just for Emily and David, but for myself. I forgave myself for the mistakes I had made, for the anger I had harbored, for the years I had wasted seeking revenge. Forgiveness was not about condoning their actions or forgetting the pain they had caused. It was about releasing myself from the shackles of the past, about freeing myself to live a life of peace and contentment. It was a long and difficult process, but ultimately, it was a liberating one. As I learned to forgive, I began to experience a sense of peace that I had not felt in years. The ghosts of the past still lingered, but they no longer held the power to haunt me. I had finally found a way to move on, to embrace a future free from the bitterness and resentment that had consumed me for so long. The road to forgiveness had been long and arduous, but the destination was worth the journey. I had learned that true strength lies not in revenge, but in the ability to forgive, to let go of the past, and to embrace the possibility of a new beginning.